And Saskatoon's a second home for me. I attended the University of Saskatchewan for a number of years, and it was an incredible part of my life. I was already an activist and a political, I don't want to say junkie, because that might insult junkies. But yeah, I've been political activist since 1990. 1990 was at a period in time when I was about 4 years older than my son here. He's 5. So at 9 years old, 8, 9 years old, a big event happened for me, which was that there was this magical place in Regina called Union Station. And it actually had passenger trains at that time. Yes, there was a use for that big building in Regina, before Casino Regina. It was called a train station. It was called Union Station. And it was, for an 8-year-old, it was an amazingly magical place. It was this place where families could get on trains and have amazing experiences going to places like Vancouver, Calgary, Winnipeg, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal. And that was just the beginning. It was part of an amazing passenger rail network this country used to have. And for me, when Brian Mulroney, yes, the same Brian Mulroney who got rid of acid rain and actually believed in the environment, he did something that was a cataclysm to environmental progress, which is he slashed Via Rail's network. In Western Canada, it was by 75%. We went from having 14 trains a week to 3. We went from having Calgary, Regina, Moose Jaw, Swift Current, Medicine Hat being connected daily by passenger trains to having nothing. And now there's not even Greyhound service along most of the Trans-Canada Highway. It's a joke, and it's an abomination. And that for me was the start of my political adventure, because I thought, how did this happen? Why did this happen? And it led me into the political sphere. And it's been an intriguing journey ever since. We have had some victories. I was part of a group of people that spearheaded the efforts to keep the Regina-Saskatoon railway line through Craigopum. And now that's a Saskatchewan success story. It's now part of AGT. The same AGT that's also part of a consortium that saved the line to Churchill. The line to Churchill, that means we don't need a pipeline up there. We have railways. And we have a railway line that was built to withstand the muskeg. Yes, it's only 40 miles an hour and you'll never see a high-speed train on it, but at least you can get up there in one of the most sustainable methods imaginable. My political adventures took me into the NDP. The NDP that at one time was progressive, at one time used to be a positive force in this province, used to be a revolutionary political force in this province, but is now sold out. Let's remember that the Scott Banda, who's villainized Unifor workers and has turned the co-op into nothing more than a corporate entity, actually ran for the leadership of the provincial NDP. So don't let the current NDP fool you into thinking that they've been this wonderful party of Tommy Douglas and Alan Blakeney. No, they were also the party of Roy Romanow. The same Roy Romanow that privatized the Sask wheat pool. The same Roy Romanow that privatized what was left of Sask oil. The same Roy Romanow that shut down 50 health hospitals in rural Saskatchewan and the Plains Health Centre. Let's remind Dr. Miley of the past of the NDP, because he's forgetting it quite easily. One of the first things that Brian Miley did when he became leader of the provincial NDP, he appointed a person who'd worked in the oil industry in Calgary to his chiefs of staff. What kind of climate change message is that? I think it's a pretty poor one. So again, don't ever let the NDP think that it has a lock hold on progressive policies, because it doesn't. Tommy Douglas left the building, and so did Alan Blakeney. My parents were also instrumental in getting me into the political movement. Even before the tragic Via Rail cutbacks in 1990, one of the first protests I remember going to was against that fellow called Grant Devine, who he actually looks like a child's player compared to what we have now with the SAS Party. The SAS Party, their last shreds of decency have long since gone, and I think we saw that when they politically murdered the Saskatchewan Transportation Company. Nowhere ever has a network like the STC been totally destroyed in the way it was. They got rid of the profitable routes, they got rid of all of the real estate and bus stations, and they did it overnight. It's something that Donald Trump would do. It was like and actually Donald Trump has quite a bit of knowledge about assassinations. He's quite keen on that. But it seems like the Sask party beat him to the punch when it came to the STC, because they assassinated that corporate entity, a public corporate entity, a crown corporation. Never ever before has a crown network been just taken away. Regina, Saskatoon was a profitable bus line. Regina to Priestville was profitable. Regina to Prince Albert broke even. But the Sask party didn't even keep any of those routes. And it's an abomination, it's an embarrassment. The Sask party used to like tagging the NDP as the party that was going to turn us into Cuba North, I wish. But no, they decided to turn us into Alabama North, the Sask party, and with a vengeance. So again, I remember going to the protests in '86, and we thought Grant Devine was bad. Well, we didn't see Scott Moe and who's that guy who's gone off to go into the oil patch in Calgary? Used to be popular. There we go. I was trying to forget his name just on the ride up here because...
Next Gen.
Oh, did you say Next Gen? Oh, Scott Moe is the next generation of...
No, Next Gen is a company that does involve uranium nuclear. And former Premier Wall is involved in that too.
Oh, isn't he a lovely character? Like he either wants to poison us with uranium or choke us with CO2 emissions. But that doesn't surprise me. But I have a lot to thank with my parents, with my political involvement, because as a family they would take us on Eurail Pass trips across Europe by train. It was quite funny seeing Greta, the marvelous Greta, who's the sort of warrior of climate change. When that picture of her sitting in a Deutsches Bundesbahn railway baggage car, actually I beat her to the punch on that. In 1989, my parents took us across Europe by train, and we actually did end up in a German baggage car as well. I'm not complaining about trains, far from it, but it just brought back a wonderful memory for me, because going across Europe by train is something that's remarkable and wonderful, and it's still possible. The Europeans are now investing in long-distance passenger trains. They've come up with flight shaming, which I think is great too, and we should have available in this country. The trouble is, in this country, we've got Via Rail up twice a week, we've got no buses in Saskatchewan, we don't even have Greyhound anymore. We are so far behind. We do need a green revolution, a democratic revolution. In 2008, I was fortunate enough to be the Green Party federal candidate in Wascana, and we got 1,700 votes in that election. So don't ever let anybody tell you we're not becoming mainstream. Also, as well, I guess to bring the story of being involved with political movements, I was in the SYND, I was in the NDP, but like Paul Manley, I was banned from the NDP because I supported the plight of the Palestinian people. It seems like in the NDP and the Liberal Party and in the Conservatives that Palestinian lives don't matter as much as anyone else's. It seems like they're somehow not as human as the rest of us. And don't for a moment think that Jagmeet Singh has changed. He hasn't. And also, as well, I did support Ryan Miley becoming leader of the NDP. But again, in his hometown, I have to say he's betrayed us, because he took my banning from the federal NDP and applied it to a provincial. So I guess Mr. Miley doesn't think that Palestinians matter much either. I believe in democratic socialism, and I'm a committed environmentalist. I'm a red-green, and I think the two are intertwined, because conservative movements across the world have basically said, we reject science on climate change. It's not happening. We're just going to keep doing what we're doing. Conservatives across the world are doing that. And it's Social Democrats, Democratic Socialists and Greens that are standing against them, often in coalition. In New Zealand we have a wonderful coalition government. And Jack's telling me 3, 2, 1, and I think that's it.